Perfect.
Okay. So sorry about that. All right. That's we're problem solving, which is
Uh,
the name of the game.
well, we just did it. We just demonstrated beautifully, right? It takes someone taking action and then folks standing by to offer support where need be. So, yeah, good job, Megan.
Yeah, totally unplanned, but hey, it worked out.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
All right. Well, Sherry, I did read your bio, which is a very impressive bio, but could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and maybe like if you're doing what you're doing at FSC these days?
Sure. So I am thrilled that under the umbrella of student life, I get to focus on initiatives that make sure that our students know that this is the right place to be, whether that's WRIGHT, which of course is kind of our slogan that we've been using, or RIGHT. We really want to make sure our students are feeling at home, that they belong, that they found their tribe, right? That's I think the buzzword that's out there nowadays. So I'm thrilled to work with our colleagues throughout student life and really across campus to make sure that Florida Southern is meeting their expectations, that we're serving the needs of the students, that we're connecting them appropriately with various resources. And so I'm relishing these years of my many years of service here at Florida Southern.
That's awesome. I get to work with you in student life and all the wonderful things that we do for our students. I really feel like they are really in a good place when they're here.
I hope so. I mean, that's obviously our goal. I think that's been Florida Southern's goal always. As you mentioned, I've been here a long time, and that is, I think, one of the glories about the type of institution that Florida Southern is, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why students were attracted to us. We offer a personal approach. Students are not just a number. Certainly, as we've continued to grow, yes, our student body is much larger than it's ever been, but there's still that connection with their faculty. There's still that connection with their academic advisor. There's still that connection with staff members, with their RA, with their vice presidents, with their president, Dr. Martin, who is very visible on campus and is really wants to hear from students and loves to be a part of student activities. He was just at the APISA event last night, as many of us were. And so that connections, I think, or those connections rather, are what Florida Southern's all about.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That's something that I talk about in the classes that I teach is, to take advantage. We're a small school, but everybody here on the campus wants to be here for the students and help them. And there's so many people that will just dive right into whatever is going to be most beneficial for them, making those deep connections. I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And, I think also because of the size and because of the type of institution that we are, it ties in beautifully with the subject matter at hand of problem solving, where, the, we want to be able to assist students whenever they have any type of challenge. I used to always kind of like cringe a little bit when you hear you heard the terminology student solutions because it implies that there are problems. But I think the reality is that there are challenges no matter what on a variety of different levels. And our goal and goals, I think, across the board in terms of businesses is finding the resources that can help solve things. It may not be a solvable situation. I mean, I think that's also the reality that comes across when there are problems that occur and there are hopefully answers to be given. And, I'd like to say that the customer is always right. There's that service capability. Publix is masterful at that. When you walk into Publix and you have a challenge, they are masterful at, and they are also large enough. And in their mindset, the customer is always right, and they're going to solve that problem to the benefit of the customer. I think they're a wonderful role model in terms of the approach of solving problems in the workplace.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love going to Publix. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about it.
yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
yeah. I mean, nobody loves going grocery shopping, but when you have to do it, like that's a nice place to go.
That's where you go. Exactly, which is kind of interesting. That's kind of their newest ad I've seen is that, you kind of taken away, you're in this fantasy land as you're walking through the aisles of Publix, and you're not really comprehending that you're grocery shopping. You're just in this wonderful world, and then all of a sudden you're to the checkout counter, and that's the reality of, yeah, I just grocery shop. So I think that's a really a fun campaign they're doing.
Definitely. Yeah, so let's talk about problem solving.
Sure.
Like, so, I mean, just like the start of our call today, like, the audio wasn't working, had to do a little bit of scramble, but, it came together just fine. What, what is problem solving, and like, why is it important in the workplace?
Um, I think problem solving is a prime example of teamwork. I don't know that any of us necessarily have been able to solve problems on their own. Perhaps we'd like to think that we have, but the reality is, just like, tangoing, it takes two to tango. I think it takes at least two to solve a problem. There are resources that are going to have to be connected. There are, I think anytime you can engage a team member with, hey, I have an idea on how to solve this, it may not be the best idea. It may need a little tweaking. And so the teamwork opportunity is certainly there. I mean, obviously there's going to be occasions when, you're out on the lone desert and you've got to make that decision. I think you use, history if you can, in terms of, has this problem ever, occurred before? Who are the audiences that are associated? What do you have at hand? What type of timeline do you have? Is it something that is at a crisis stage that
Mhm.
has to be taken care of? Or do you have the luxury of a little bit of time where you can stand back and think things through totally, make sure you're not missing any nuances, and then go in with the appropriate answer?
Oh, I really like that. Yeah, knowing your audience, knowing what is feasible, I think is really important. So I kind of want to break down a couple of things that you touched on, because I think you bring a lot of valuable points to this discussion. So, kind of knowing your audience, how does it look different?
Oh, wow. I mean, it can look different via the demographics involved. It can look different based upon the relationship that you personally may have with that audience, what your quote unquote title and role is, what do you have within your power to accomplish. I think there's a variety of different factors. I think there is is it a problem that needs to be solved because of a physical nature? Is it a problem that needs to be solved, because of an emotional nature? I mean, there are certain things that make our hearts beat faster, that we know we have to engage in, we have to find an answer for. So there's so many factors, I think, that actually go into that first analysis. And maybe that really is the key whenever we talk about problem solving, is you got to think. You've got to analyze, first of all, what's really happening. I think you have to listen. You have to, before there's a word that comes out of your mouth, you've got to hear someone. And I think the first step is always acknowledging to someone that they've been heard. I think that starts the relationship building, of respect. And I think respect is key whenever there's a problem to be solved, in terms of again, whether that's one individual that you're engaging with and you've got to solve an issue, or it's a broader scope. You've got to have those steps in play.
Wow, that's really important. I like you said. Oh, now I'm drawing a blank, Sherry. Oh goodness, my
That's okay. Let's problem solve together.
totally threw me off. Oh, being heard. I think that is invaluable. People need to feel like they're included, and just to be heard and know that their problem is valuable. I can't that just being brushed off. If you go to your supervisor or your team with a problem and they don't feel like, it's a big deal, you don't feel like you're heard, that could really be a disconnect within the structure of the team that you're working with, and can really start to break down morale. So that could be a whole another conversation on
Oh, Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
respect
Yeah. And
and
Megan, I love to use the terminology when I've been having conversations with team members, or whether that's again, with a colleague or a student, but the acknowledgement I always like to start with, and it's a truthful acknowledgement, is that I appreciate what they're saying to me. I value what they're willing to say, and what their truth is, what their concern is. I appreciate that they've taken that they're trusting me with that information, whether that's small scale or large scale. And again, something that might be small scale, the reality is, to that individual, it may be very large scale. And just that acknowledgement of, I appreciate what you're saying. I may not agree with what you're saying,
Mhm, mhm.
and perhaps, again, the delving into the problem at hand, I can't give you the answer that you want. And I think that's a whole other side of problem solving, right? Problem solving isn't always that the solution is what we want it to be. I think we would always like for it to be, and we hope that it would be. And in
Mhm.
some instances, companies, businesses perhaps are able to do that. It all depends upon the dynamics, but it's that appreciation, to begin with, that the acknowledgement that you're hearing what that individual is choosing to share with you.
Yeah, that's very impactful. Because I mean, I grew up with, because it said so, and or get over it. And I don't think
Yeah.
my parents meant that in like a bad way, but
Mhm.
I wasn't heard. It wasn't like my problems were, oh, that's not a real problem. When you grow
Mhm.
up, that won't be a real problem. But at the time, it was a
Mhm.
big problem for whatever it might have been, a fight with a friend, or
Right.
I didn't get the picks for, a team or something. And that was a big problem. But like you said, you might not agree with it. That's also something you can respectfully agree to disagree, and not tear down that person's character, or not have it come between you as colleagues, or friends, but to be able to say, okay, I hear you.
Mhm.
Um, I don't see why it's a big deal, but I see it's a big deal to you.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I like
And
that. That's important.
yeah, and the acknowledgement of that, there's the proverbial two different sides to something. Okay, how do we solve that? Where do we find the middle of that? Where do we, whether that's a compromise, whether that's a negotiation, or what have you, there's an answer out there, and it's working to find what that is that can mitigate those issues at hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's really, I hadn't even really thought of it in that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Another thing I like to think about with problem solving, like if you have a problem and you're coming to your supervisor, or coming to a teammate, it's always good to also come with a proposed solution as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that is more and more in the business world. Um, that's an expectation. You better be coming with a solution and an answer. Most leaders don't want to sit there and, I mean, let me say, in some cases, it may end up that the ultimate leader obviously dictates what's going to happen, as their role may
Mhm.
may need to be, right? If you're in
Right.
that high leadership position, yeah, it's your head that's on the block, so you're going to be making the ultimate decision. But I think that is one of the key things that team members, again, in trying to solve things, is have a solution. You just don't go in with a question mark. And again, depending upon the settings, but that's an excellent point, that in today's world, you better have thought it through, and have some suggestions at hand, and then be able to accept if your suggestion, your solution, is not chosen, is not the one that's pursued. I think that was a great lesson in the role that I played here in director of public relations for about 7 to 10 years, something like that, a number of years ago. And I always saw my role in public relations. My role was to counsel. My role was to advise. And so, but I also had to recognize that just because I counseled and advised that this was the best course, ultimately, if that wasn't the course that that my president at the time chose to do, or whoever I was advising, then again, I had done my job in terms of making what I thought was the solution that would have been appropriate, and then things went from there. But I think that's a huge life lesson, and more businesses, again, you know, I think it's challenging if you work in a workplace and you're not empowered to come to the table with suggestions for solving a problem. I think we're all fortunate that we work at an institution and in a business where that is encouraged, with our leadership to have solutions. Come and say, okay, this was a problem. Let's see what we can fix.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a lot of awareness on your part, and not just saying like, "Hey, I've got a problem, fix it," and then sitting back and waiting for people to do for you, which is another topic I talk about on here. Taking the initiative. So you'll gain a lot of respect from your leadership team and your teammates if you do come with at least a proposed solution, but also having the emotional intelligence and maturity to accept it. If they say, okay, thank you, I hear you, we're going to take that under advisement. Or and hopefully you wouldn't have a boss, but you may have in the workplace. You may come across some of these more tyrants that are not really leaders, they're more managers, who could just say, no, I'm not even going to entertain that. And that would be unfortunate. We're lucky that we don't have that, and hopefully our students would never be in a situation like that. But that's going to happen. You're going to come across poor management, poor leadership, where they don't necessarily respect everybody. But if you can get into a situation where you're part of a team, you're heard, everything's inclusive, hopefully your leader has more of a servant kind of leader attitude, where they want to be there for the entire team. And that just makes it such an enjoyable place to work, and spend the majority of your days with this team. So I think that's huge. And I talk about this all the time in my classes, like how important it is to find a place where you like to work, find your passion.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It is huge. It is huge. I was also thinking that there's also the component that I think, you and I are very strong individuals. And so the other piece of it is, when you're in a situation where there's a problem to be solved, you have to kind of balance and judge within yourself. You don't necessarily want to be a steamroller, right? You may be just a very strong individual, and by nature, oh my gosh, you see a problem, you're going to steamroll it in there and fix it and correct it. But really, again, knowing the environment, knowing the circumstances, knowing all of that, would that be the best course of action to take? Or again, does it really call for a more team approach to having something fixed, if you will? So I think, it's a human nature kind of thing, right? Anytime that we see something, and again, what do we do? And just on the other side of it, there are individuals that, don't want to be that steamroller, right? They want to sit in the background, and perhaps their comfort level is not to jump in and necessarily fix something. But again, depending upon the setting, recognizing that they still have something to contribute. And they, I think everybody can see things differently too. And that's one of the beautiful things in regards to problem solving, particularly in a team setting, in a business. You're going to have so many different eyes and specialties and knowledge and history that comes. What I bring in terms of solving a problem with long-term service is something totally different with a team member who is newer, either to the institution or to their job or to the area. Again, I think that's what is such a neat concept. I know teamwork is a whole nother episode of yours, but so much a part of when it comes to trying to navigate and problem solve.
Oh, absolutely. Diversity in your team, seeing things from different points of view, different perspectives, different backgrounds can really help. You see the problem, like the whole elephant. There's a cartoon that I've seen where it's like all these there's like 6 different scientists and they're all blindfolded. It's like a Far Side cartoon or something like that. They're all blindfolded and they're all touching a different part of an elephant, and they're only touching one part of it. And like, oh, I'm touching a tree. Oh, I'm touching, something else. And they're not seeing the whole picture. But if all of those scientists took their blindfolds off and then they could see not just the elephant, but see their specific part of the elephant and be able to bring that, like, hey, this is the trunk, this is the tail, this is the leg. And it's that diversity and it's that all inclusion that can really help even come to a greater problem solving kind of strategy, because you're bringing in all these different points of views, whether it's like you said, longevity, or maybe somebody had, like, my degrees in psychology and I moved around a lot, and I was able to live internationally for a little while. Like, I have a different perspective than somebody who, say, has lived in one place their whole life, or
Yeah.
has, like you said, stayed at an institution for a long time. And it just
Yeah.
brings a holistic view to the table.
You said that beautifully. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's awesome. No, I love it. But yeah, so problem solving, this is, students, I want you to take this away. Like, there's going to be days when the wheels fall off. And you have to just roll with it. You can't personally melt down every time that there's, something that goes wrong. I'm a planner. I'm very organized. I do like structure. So when there is a little bit of, something like a wrench in the plans, I have to tweak, I have to adjust and make it work, because things can and do happen. Like, the Wi-Fi will go out, or, your computer crashes, or, whatever. You have to figure it out and still make it work without just like throwing your hands up being like, okay, well, I can't do anything because this one thing went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, Megan, when you were saying that, that immediately brought to mind too. That's one of the reasons why, I think in the business, in the workplace, procrastination is not our friend. Because if we are procrastinating and then all of a sudden, as you said, those unknown problems all of a sudden occur and you've waited until the last minute, then you have a whole nother set of issues associated with. So, I can't speak highly enough of the need for planning, because things are going to happen. But you try, if you plan as much as you can and you do as much in advance as you can, hopefully there's going to be less occasion when, again, that proverbial wrench gets thrown in, and you've got to be able to figure it out. And you also stated, which I think is so true, you got to keep your wits about you.
Yes.
When that has hit the fan, you've got to be able to say, okay, I need to step back. I need to keep cool. I need to keep my composure. And some of that is innate, maybe for some. Some of it, that's a learned skill. Some of it comes with the proverbial age, I think, as just an experience where, you recognize when is something on fire, and when is it truly on fire, and when do you think it's on fire, and trying to navigate those pieces.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Being able to assess the situation for what it actually is.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's part of problem solving, right? I mean,
That
again,
is.
knowing, is this something that immediately has to be handled, and if you immediately handle it, are you going to end up missing something, or do you have, again, all that information that you need? And I think whenever problems are being addressed, that first step is always, I appreciate what you're saying. Let me look into it. If you go into something cold and you're not aware of that problem had even existed, or that this person perceives that this is a problem, the understanding, again, the appreciation for what they're saying, and then the step back to say, let me see what I can find out. I want to be able to assist you in the best way that I can, but I need to ask some questions. I need to look into this a little bit further. When can I get back with you? And again, I think people like timely responses,
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
and acknowledging that, so that expectations are true to everyone. So they're not expecting a call within 15 minutes. When you recognize, I'm not going to be able to meet that expectation. I've got to look into this. And while human nature is, I want this solved now.
Right.
And perhaps there are crisis situations perhaps have to have some addressing to some level at that point. But the grand scheme of things, I think, as we look through and try to solve problems, it takes time. It takes knowledge. It takes steps associated with that. And it takes patience on all sides of it. I don't think any of us have ever gone into a situation where we're wanting and we're needing to problem solve that we wouldn't like to just wave a magic wand and take care of the issue right then and there. In any business, usually there's steps along the way, questions, what have you, that need to be addressed, need to be found out, in terms of, again, making sure the right resources are in place to solve that problem.
That's wow, you said that great. And the patience part, patience is definitely a virtue.
Oh yeah.
It's not often found in a lot of people.
Now, and I'm after 34 years, I'm still learning. So, I think that's, again, some of us perhaps have that wonderful skill innately. I don't know. I think I've developed it. I'd like to say I'm better at it than I was years ago, but yeah, just it helps when you have great people around you that you're part of a really cohesive team.
It makes a world of difference. I love coming to work. I love working with not just my team but the students. It makes a whole difference just to when you spend the majority of your waking hours at work, having a good supportive team and a fun team. We laugh.
Yeah.
We have
Oh
great
yeah.
time,
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sherry, and for sharing your insights on problem solving in the workplace. I always enjoy my time with you. So thank you so much again.
Right back at you. I enjoyed it and appreciated the opportunity, and happy to work with you at any time. It was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you, students, for joining. The QR code is on the screen for if you are logged in on your computer, if you want to track your attendance. I also put the link in the chat pod. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And I'm sorry about my camera and the audio, but we made it work.
We solved it. You
we
solved
it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.